Dakar, a heaving metropolis of 13 million people, most of whom weren't surprised when their city recently received the dubious honour of being named as the second worst city on the planet. The survey, conducted by the Economist Intelligence Unit, a business information arm of The Economist magazine, put the Bangladeshi capital just ahead of Harare in Zimbabwe. Researchers found Dakar scored below average marks in 5 broad categories that people most care about: stability, healthcare, culture and environment, education and infrastructure. Even in the lush countryside, life in this land of over 160 million people is hard for many. It's the most densely populated large country on Earth, and a staggering 80% of its people live on an income of less than $2 a day. Despite a drift to urban areas, the vast majority of people earn their living on the land.
In an underdeveloped country like Bangladesh, with a vast population of 160 million, the struggle is far more rudimentary and desperate. Even free education is no guarantee that people can afford to send their children to school.
সংসারে কিভাবে চলবে? দুইজন মানুষ কাজ করে, দুইজনে কাজ করে তো চালাই। চলার অসুবিধা দেখি, বড় মায়ের ভরা বন্ধ দিয়ে দিছি।
Girls are especially likely to miss out. Bangladesh is making progress, though, thanks to initiatives like those of the World Bank, which effectively pay parents to send and keep their daughters in school.
If you look at a woman who's 50 years old today in Bangladesh, she has less than a 20% chance of having completed primary school. If you look at a 15-year-old girl today in Bangladesh, there's almost a 90% chance that she's completed primary school. So a huge, I mean, this is within one generation, a very huge amount of progress has in fact been made.
Even so, less than half of girls make it to secondary school. The Islamic Development Bank helps the government to fund and run this school for girls a couple of hours outside Dhaka. It's a madrasa, or religious school, although it also teaches secular subjects.
আশেপাশের লোক যারা নাকি কোনোদিন স্কুলে যাওয়ার চিন্তাও করতো না, মাথায় যাওয়ার চিন্তাও করতো না, তারা বাড়ির পাশে দেখিয়া এই শিক্ষা প্রতিষ্ঠানে আসা শুরু করলো। মানুষকে আমরা যারা গরিব মানুষ খেতে মারে কাজ করে, পোলাপানরে পড়ানোর কোনো চিন্তা করে নাই, মেয়েকে পড়ানোর তারও চিন্তা করে নাই। তা করে আমার বাড়ি থেকে বুঝাইছি যে আসো, লেখাপড়া করা, লেখাপড়া করাইলে তোমাদের ভবিষ্যৎ ভালো হবে, তোমার ছেলে ইঞ্জিনিয়ার ডাক্তার হইতে পারবো। তারা ওই কথায় সাড়া দিছে, শয়ে শয়ে ছেলেপেলেরা আসছে, ছাত্র সংখ্যা অনেক বাড়ছে, তো শিক্ষার মানও আমাদের ভালো হয়েছে।
The village next to the school lies amid sprawling rice fields. Yet most of the villagers are landless and impoverished, scraping a living from various types of fabric making. The education message is starting to hit home.
তার মতন আর হইব কে স্যার, আর তার মতন আর কেউ হইতো না, কারণ হ্যাঁ তো অসুবিধা থুরা লই আইছি, মানে হ্যাঁ তো আর হ্যাঁ আর অসুবিধা থুরা আনলে তো আর চলতো না। সবাই যদি খালি একরকমই করি তো চলবে।
Malaysia's capital, Kuala Lumpur, home to the world's tallest buildings, a symbol of the government's drive to make Malaysia a fully developed country. But just 20 minutes away by car is a place that seems centuries removed from the capital. Here, these people have no electricity, no plumbing, only the crudest form of running water. They are the Orang Asli, Malay for original people, the first inhabitants of the Malaysian peninsula and its poorest. They suffer high rates of alcoholism, of malaria, of tuberculosis, of malnutrition, of infant mortality.
First thing we want is, we want to share the same benefit as the other communities.
The country's Malay majority enjoy a host of special benefits and privileges in education, in housing, in business, in employment. That's because they are considered to be sons of the soil, indigenous Malaysians, in contrast to the local Chinese and Indian communities. Officially, the Orang Asli are also considered sons of the soil, since they were here first. but they say they are treated very much as second class to the Malays. The land used to belong to us, this man says, but the Malays have made us like this. We are poor people, we are not happy, we are also sons of the soil. There are some 80,000 Orang Asli living in the peninsula today. Rapid economic growth has brought great benefits to the country's Malays, Chinese and Indians, but it has frequently only brought upheaval for the Aboriginal people. They are often pushed aside for development projects like dams. This man says that when his village was uprooted, each household got less than 200 Canadian dollars in compensation. That's much more than some others. The problem is that the Orang Asli have no rights to what they consider their ancestral land.
Up until they came here, they'd never been on grass. They'd never, been outside in the elements.
An orientation session for a new batch of volunteers at a Cambodian bear sanctuary.
Generally, they've all been confiscated, brought in from the pet trade or also the restaurant trade as well. He was actually found in the back of a restaurant, and now he's the breeding male in Perth Zoo. By looking at that photo, you wouldn't even think he was still alive.
The front paw of this unfortunate sun bear ended up in a bowl of soup. He'll now live out his days in comfort, with a steady stream of volunteers helping see to that.
I'm passionate about wildlife, and I was living in Australia, so it seems like it was pretty close to this place, and it was a nice idea to help the animals.
Having paid to fly out to Cambodia, and then paid a fee to cover their room and board, they help out with manual labor, with preparing the animals' food, and with cleaning up the aftermath.
It's definitely going to be an experience. I've never really owned pets before, so that's never cleared up anything's poo before, so that's going to be a big task.
This centre is run by the Australian NGO Free the Bears, in conjunction with the Cambodian Wildlife Department.
We have a nice flow through of volunteers, and it's great for the keepers because it gives them a little bit of extra help during their day. It educates people, it teaches people about what Free the Bears work does.
Peanut butter and jelly.
To try to replicate the experience bears would get foraging in the wild, the volunteers prepare appetizing concoctions of peanut butter and jelly, green beans and dog food to stash around their enclosures.
The only thing that you don't do is put them on the electric fence. I know you're laughing, but it has been done before, That's why I mentioned it. And don't forget to keep your eyes on the ground for snakes, please.
I've just arrived in Malacca on Malaysia's southwest coast, the oldest city in the country. This once important port was ruled successively by Indonesians, Portuguese, Dutch, the British, the Japanese, and then the British again, before Malaysia finally won its independence in 1957. And all those historic comings and goings have made Malacca the most ethnically diverse place in what's already a very multi-ethnic country.
The port attracted migrants from China, India, the Middle East and the Indonesian archipelago. They married among themselves, as well as with the locals and the Europeans, to create whole new ethnic groups. And I'm keen to see whether the racial harmony that Malaysia is so proud of holds up in my ethnically mixed square mile in the historic core of this city. I'll also be looking to explore the impact on Malacca of getting UNESCO World Heritage status 3 years ago.
I've visited quite a few towns and cities that have received UNESCO heritage status in my travels around Southeast Asia and elsewhere. And something I've noticed is that in the core historic zones, often residents and traditional trades and shops have been pushed out to make way for gift shops, restaurants and boutique hotels. And I'm hoping a similar fate doesn't befall Malacca.
Malacca is famous around the region for its antique shops. But as I strolled Jonkers Street, I found a profusion of restaurants now, as well as a lot of shops selling tacky, generic tourist stuff. Tucked away among them, a rusted old sign stood out.
I'm assuming from the sign that you have been in business for some time.
Yeah, 35 years.
How long?
35 years.
35 years in the same spot.
Yes, yes.
Then what do you think about the changes that have happened to Malacca in the past few years?
Well, I think it's too rapid. And this street is supposed to bring in tourists to look at those antiques and old stuff. But then it has turned into a hawker center.
Walking on, I didn't find any goldsmiths left on Goldsmith Street, but I did find a few more traditional tradespeople.
Ah. Dan nama jalan ini Jalan Tukang Besi. Berapa tukang besi masih ada di jalan ini? Ada lagi di sini jalan? Dua saja. Oh.
Orang mau lah. Berapa orang tak mau?
Tak mau buat.
Kuat.
The historic core of Malacca turned out to be even more culturally and ethnically rich than I expected, with all the various groups seeming to get along well together in the narrow confines of my square mile, while at the same time preserving what it is that makes them different in the first place. As for the physical heritage, the buildings themselves should be safe as long as Malacca has UNESCO World Heritage status. But just as there's more to preserving a person's culture and tradition than just hanging on to some old photos of their ancestors, it's a lot more complicated to preserve the culture and character of a place than just to safeguard the buildings themselves.
And that's going to be the biggest challenge for the authorities and for the self-appointed guardians of Malacca's unique heritage.